Join Lee Bellinger today on the Bellinger Report. Lee is the publisher of Off Grid Confidential, one of the last information financial newsletters to be delivered 100% through the mail and completely independent of the internet and big tech scolds. Lee has been publishing continuously since 1988 and is your guide to off-grid living.
Hello, this is Eric Kramer and Lee Bellinger here today.
I'm Lee Bellinger with the Bellinger Report, and Eric Kramer and I are going to talk today. So, Eric, let's talk about the subject that I think that is foremost on many pro-liberty Americans' minds today, of course, which is the question, is Biden and are the Democrats currently imploding? Is that a wish? Is that a fact? Is that a speculation? Is it a reality? You know, we're now past the first phase of the Afghan debacle. We don't know yet if there's going to be more blowback, but I expect there will be. And let's just talk about, there's a lot of stuff on the domestic agenda for Biden this month in September. And, what is going to happen and what isn't going to happen. I think we'll start with those speculations. So I think you've got some new polling numbers are quite interesting, Eric. Let's kick it off with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the polls they've been doing are basically showing the Biden and the Dems are imploding. But I know, Lee, you've been doing this a whole lot longer than me, and election's still 12 months away, and people tend to forget, when it comes time to the election, they only remember things like that happened 30 days before the election, and Americans have short memories. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But listen to these actual numbers. Rasmussen, which is one of the better polling organizations, they just did polling. 52% want Biden to resign. Even a bigger part there is only 39% disagree with that, and they don't want Biden to resign. But the worst part is 60% of the people in the same polling actually want Biden impeached. I know we talked about that. It's interesting how there's 8% more people that want to see him impeached than want him to resign. I don't know exactly how that falls. You got any idea on that? And I'll go on.
Well, the Democrats misused the impeachment tool against Trump in a very improper way. And I think there's a lot of Republicans and conservatives that say, we should use this to impeach Biden on grounds. And it's a nice thought, but it's, he's guilty of stupidity, not of high crimes and misdemeanors. He got elected on false premises. Yes. But bottom line is stupidity is not an impeachable offense. It might be part of, what got made the president get into trouble, but it's not an impeachable offense. I mean, it's a nice idea, but there's better ways to deal with Biden. And I think, the big thing is I agree with the Democrat, Leon Panetta. He said that this was the night that our 13 troops got killed. And he said, the president, this is the Bay of Pigs. And when the Bay of Pigs happened and Kennedy's abortive attempt to invade Cuba, when it failed, Kennedy took full responsibility and didn't blame everybody else, even though he was furious at his generals in the CIA. But he took full responsibility. And in fact, his poll numbers went up. Mm-hmm. Kennedy's numbers went up. And he there was no BS in that. But the thing was, and here's what's scary about that, is that the Russians took their measure of Kennedy and the Bay of Pigs, and within 2 years, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis where civilization itself almost collapsed. And that's what we've got with Biden that we should be really worried about, because this is a guy who's been played. Not only did he end energy independence in the United States, now he's sucking around OPEC and he's sucking around Russia to produce more gasoline so the price of gasoline doesn't go up too high before the election and cause the voters to realize that these green policies are not only expensive and freedom stealing, but just damned inconvenient. And it's a lot like the Jimmy Carter era as well. When Jimmy Carter, when he said that the Soviet Union was no threat to the United States and that the people that worried about it had an inordinate fear of communism, and his embassy had been taken over by the Ayatollah, the Russians invaded Afghanistan. So, Jimmy Carter, there's some real dangers ahead for the United States, but the polling is, I think he can recover and will recover from this particular mistake in Afghanistan. But the problem with that is that this is going to keep rolling and rolling and rolling. You're going to see more. You're going to see ISIS taking over the Middle East again, for example. and they're going to start beheading people. And, Trump got rid of all that using the Russians, I might add. He used Russian military. He had an alliance with the Russians, which the Democrats were against. And now the Democrats have driven the Russians and the Chinese together. We do not want the Chinese and the Russians together. The Russians are our natural allies for taking out terrorists. The Russians have 13 time zones. Their country is vulnerable to terrorism. We have 4 time zones in the lower 48. They have 13, Russia. That's a lot of, actually, I think since the collapse of the Soviet Union, they're down to 11.
Well, the interesting thing about these polls, and I haven't had a chance to read the newer ones that came out, but from what I understand, they've dropped. These were last week, because one of the things people are getting upset about now on top of it, us Americans, is, I don't know if you've seen the reports where the Americans are still there. There's people on the ground that are trying to get them out. And they said the Taliban's not the problem. The Secretary of State or the State Department's the problem. They're not letting our own Americans get out. And people are like, what is the problem? So it's, continued more of a slide for Biden. The only good thing for Biden is 58% of people in those same polls believe Kamala is qualified for her job duties. In other words, as vice president. 47% don't believe she's qualified at all. So, actually in the like and dislike polls, she's more disliked than Biden, which is hard to believe. Yeah, another thing, there's another set of polls that was out last week, too, the end of the week. The Economist Hugo and also the Morning Consult poll. Both of those were on the direction of the country. And these were interesting because, first of all, they got totally boycotted by the mainstream media. I mean, they've been buried so you don't see them. But this is on the direction of the country. The Economist Hugo poll had that 58% people say we're headed in the wrong direction, and only 29% say we're on the right track. But here's the most interesting thing on this poll. It wasn't weighted equally. It had a higher percentage by 14% of Democrats. Remember, Democrats, 14% more, which means, and 58% said headed in the wrong direction, only 29% in the right direction. If you remove the 14% bias of the oversample and made it reflective of Republicans, independents, and also Democrats, it would be 75% of the people say it's headed in the wrong direction. And that's similar to the Morning Consult poll, which had 61% in the wrong direction. So,
yeah. And those numbers will be very affected by higher prices at the supermarket and the gas pump. Those are 2 big enchiladas that, is going to turn out middle-class voters. I also think that the collapse in the independent vote on Biden is actually the more instructive.
Oh, yeah.
And then, the big issue now is what is the impact going to be of all this on the $3.5 trillion Bernie Sanders package before Congress? And I think we're already going to see that that's going to be greatly reduced.
Well, the good thing on that, I mean, Manchin's back in the game. He's actually put written documentation out, op-ed, if that's what you want to call it. Yeah. He's also been interviewed, and he said he wants all of the senators to basically put it on pause, the package. And he said, there's too many things. We've got the Afghanistan debacle. We've got inflation. We've got jobs issues. We've got all these problems and, even COVID. And he's saying right now is not the time. And he said he's not voting for it at this point in time. He's going to wait and see. So we're back to Manchin kind of, got his little finger in the dike, the leaky dike there and trying to maybe pull it out so it sinks, and it cracks. But the other thing to look at is and this goes back to the California governor, the Newsom thing, which I think that election is going to be on the 14th of September. Yes. Yeah.
Now, I noticed that the Drudge Report and all the other left-wing schmucks are putting out polls that saying Gavin is home free now to try to discourage Republicans from turning out. In my opinion, I don't know. I don't know if Gavin's going to lose, but if he does, it's going to have a devastating effect. If a Republican takes control of California, even if it's a fluke, it's going to scare the crap out of Democrats for voting for Bernie Sanders crap, because it's already a dangerous package to support for them.
Yeah.
And that would be seen as handwriting on the wall in the country, meaning that if even in California, and there's also a couple of elections coming up in Virginia before this that could go Republican. And if they do, it would be a sign to the incumbent Democrats, be careful about further aggravating the electorate with Bernie Sanders' campaign. That could collapse and take down the infrastructure package as well.
I don't know how this actually works, but one of the things when you talk about it being if Larry Elder in particular wins, I mean, that's who they're saying might have a chance to win. But I listened to him, and I don't know how this would exactly work, but one of the things he said, for those of people that don't realize, Feinstein is not like in the picture anymore. And One of the reasons they say she's got more dementia going on than Joe Biden, which is hard to believe.
She does.
Elder said, if you put me in office, I will replace her with a Republican. Now, I don't know how much,
well, that's
power he
now
has
that
to do
probably
that.
might get the Democrats to turn out and vote because it's possible that the Democrats are going to realize that. But on the other hand, you've got this homeless situation out there that's really cutting into his numbers. I think he's got bigger problems because people are sick of the crime. They're sick of the crime and the homeless thing in California and the taxes. And it could just be that he's going to be a sacrificial lamb. Maybe they'll turn it all out on him, maybe. But either way, if somehow Gavin loses and is replaced, that would definitely wreck, in my opinion, any chances of passing anything big for Biden until the voters come to the rescue. By the way, if the Republican Party is so dumb that they sit on their laurels and just think that Afghanistan debacle is going to win them the congressional House elections, they're very, very mistaken. That by itself isn't going to do it. But what it could do is collapse a bunch of other initiatives of Biden's that in turn would demoralize his voters so that they don't turn out. Because our voters are going to be very motivated to make a statement. That's the problem with the first term of any president. If voters are happy with the president, they don't get out and vote because they're not mad. But it's all about turnout. Turnout is all that matters. And, they're already going to have a huge turnout against them. So, it's really hard to tell yet. Now, and Biden is going out there to California to campaign for Newsom, interestingly enough. So I know they're worried.
Yeah. Well, hey, what you said about the Republicans, they are that dumb. I mean, unfortunately, they are that dumb that they would sit back on their laurels. The only thing I was excited to see, did you see last week where McCarthy came out and wrote a written statement? And I heard other congressmen also, I saw them on different interviews saying that they were going to be totally against this, but they put on notice to tech companies because, the insurrection January 6th committee contacted the different mobile carriers.
I saw
and
that.
Basically want them to, they asked for, I don't know on the backside, but like for all the text messages of the congressmen. And I think it was just isolated to Republican congressmen. That's going
to blow up in their face.
Yeah. What they wanted, here was the part that was good, man. They asked for, I think, for a month on the other side of January 6th in a year prior. And the greatest thing is because the Republicans, they are that dumb, they are that useless. But McCarthy came out, interviews, wrote it, and also, like I said, other congressmen. But what they put the tech companies on notice, and they said, we just want you to know when we take the House back in 2022 and we take the Senate back, if you went along with this unconstitutional mandate and actually did it, we promise you will not do business in the United States anymore. As it's about time the Republicans finally.
That's awesome. Have you got that letter?
I don't have it with me, but McCarthy put it out, and he
forward me that letter. I'll put it in the newsletter. That's good.
Yeah, I'll find that for you. But
that's another.
Finally, the Republicans said they're going to do something.
And that's another thing that I wanted to mention to people is that the Trump lawsuit, which has been widely derided as ineffective and all that, he's documented 65,000 cases of bias against conservative groups and people. And I cited this in the September edition of Off-Grid Confidential. The first one that got my attention was this lady in California. She had produced a video on how to create COVID-compliant church services, and Facebook shut her down. She must have been quite a subversive. Yeah. Well, the gambling establishments at least are open, but not the churches. And she came up, she had produced a video on how to make your church compliant and how to make it safer and all that to go to church. And Facebook shut her down. And the other The other big one that got my attention, Eric, was that a 21-year-old guy got killed by an illegal alien who had been deported twice, and he came back. This is on Joe Biden's watch, by the way. So this guy came back in through our unsecured borders, and he's dead. And the parents put out a statement on Facebook, and the sons of bitches on Facebook banned it. Now, 65,000 stories like that. But here's what really matters is that state legislatures all across the country are taking apart all these. This is a nice database of all these wrongs done to pro-liberty Americans. And these examples in these different states are going to serve as the basis for legislation on the state level that's similar to what Kevin McCarthy threatened on the House level. And I really think you're gonna see vast improvements in legislation in various states, 2/3 of the states, which we control, which the conservatives control, Republicans control, and they can bring big tech to heel if enough of those states go to town on it, and they will. And I also believe you're also going to see much, much better enforcement of voting integrity. And if that one thing happens, that's going to change everything. What's going to happen is the true majority will emerge because these Republican hacks for decades they've been getting intimidated into standing up for Republican voting integrity rights because they get accused of racist if they change. Oh, you're being racist. You're being racist. Well, that isn't going to work this time. Republicans aren't going to fall for that anymore. So because all those political hacks were so deeply involved in surrendering to the left, when President Trump tried to get them to stand up and say, no, we saw cheating, they ended up backing the other side because it would have made them look incompetent and stupid. And now I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you're going to actually start seeing honest elections for the first time in decades. And that's good for pro-liberty Americans. I don't think those bastards have anything going for them except control of the media and the political incompetence. Every time they say racist, dumb Republicans hide under the bed. They're dumbasses and they're politically incompetent. Anyway, I don't think that's going to deter. I think we're going to have real poll watching, and I think we're going to have a real, much more attention focused on that. So these are all good things because we got our asses kicked there in November 2020, and maybe that's what we needed. And we need to go after big tech. And I'm glad to see Kevin McCarthy did that. I didn't know that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, I'll look it up for you and get it to you. Hey, one of the things we talked about, I don't think it's just Biden. I think the Dems and the left is actually imploding to a degree. I don't know if you caught this last week, but I know you caught this, but I don't know if you caught the results of it. Last week, Texas went ahead and, passed the heartbeat bill for them in Texas, freaking the left out, because they're worried abortion is going to go away. It was a 5-4 vote by the Supreme Court. John Roberts, of course, voted with the liberals. He did say and make sure everybody was on notice and understood that the fact that they did not hear the case, because they always get to pick if they want to hear it or not, did not mean that was, don't look at that as saying, oh, the court is going to, throw out Roe Wade or whatever in the future. Right. You look at it in 2022. But of course, Roberts did that, but the other conservatives all voted. And so we won 5-4. But it's amazing to watch the news because what's so funny is, of course, what did the Democrats come out and do? The sooner it happened, you saw them all on TV screaming and crying like, oh, no. But what are they screaming? My body, my choice. Wasn't that pretty interesting? Because this is where the Dems are losing a foothold now. And it was funny. You'd watch the talking heads. And when they would see this, they'd say, wait a minute, we can't say that anymore. Why can't they say that? Because, they've always been sitting here saying, hey, the government, it's your body, your choice. But now they're saying on the left that it's okay for the government to mandate vaccines. So see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they haven't updated all their talking points. So literally people that are being interviewed or these talking heads on the news, CNN or whatever, are starting to reference, the my body, my choice. And then it's like, oh, we really can't say that anymore. Even gets better. Psaki was during one of the reporter interviews was asked, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he basically asked her, well, what's Joe Biden think about this? And of course, she said, well, Biden's always been for women's choice, and he's always been for, health care and all of that for women. And he said, but, really? And, shouldn't this be a great thing? It's for life. And she went on to tell him, and I love this one, You don't get to question this. This is a woman's thing. I mean, this is about women, and only women do this and have children. What's wrong with that logic? Who started all this that men can have babies? And it's another thing. You'll literally catch them on TV saying, wait a minute, we can't say that. So what's happening is everything that the left is doing, it just shows how unprincipled they are. And all they do is come up with their little taglines whenever they come to the newest thing they want. Another good one, Afghanistan. We know it's going to be horrible and terrible for women there. But you know what we really can't tell them? We can't go and say, hey, you can't make women wear burqas, these masks. Not when in our country, we're requiring people to wear masks, including our children who are like 4 years old going to school. So the whole left, their talking points are being turned upside down. And it just shows how ridiculous they are. And they'll just come up with a new one. You want the one on abortion? This is what I actually heard. This was one of the things that they brought up, because in Texas, it was the 6 weeks is about when you hear the heartbeat. So they're saying once there's a heartbeat, can't have an abortion. Now, what they did in Texas, which is really pretty fascinating, they're not holding the woman, even though people on the left said, oh my God, they're going to throw all these women in jail. No, they're not. Women who have an abortion are protected. What they can do, though, is anybody, if you know a woman has got an abortion, you can sue the provider. Like the mom can be mad. The father could be mad. The Uber driver. And if you go and sue the provider that did you win a $10,000 lawsuit. So that's how they went about this. But here's one of the things the left is already saying, and this is how disgusting the left is. They're saying, well, that's a problem with a 6-week heartbeat. And you know why? Because they can't detect Down syndrome until 10 weeks. 80% of all children that have Down syndrome are aborted in the United States. And now one of their talking points is we're going to have all these Down syndrome children now because you're going to have the heartbeat at 6 weeks. That's how disgusting and evil they are.
Oh, yeah. 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 Something.
So it's all crazy, man. I mean, so I think there's some hope for us. That win there, in spite of all the bad that's going on around us, we don't even think about that was a big win at what happened in Texas. The state I'm in, South Carolina, they already passed a heartbeat bill here too. There's several states that have done that. And there's many more that are looking to do the same thing. So it really, if you look at, that has been the conservative issue ever since Roe Wade is abortion. And, in spite of all the bad things, Afghanistan, losing soldiers, COVID, losing liberties, everything that's going on, came through and we got a big win. Last week. Might be temporary, but you know what? 132 babies are aborted every day in Texas. If that stays in place for a year, that's 50,000 children that will not be aborted in the next year in Texas. Huge.
Yeah, that's big. That's very big.
I got a question back on Afghanistan for you. Maybe you can think of something in your life you've done like this. Isn't it amazing how Biden and the administration, General Milley, he should be court-martialed, but, Blinken, Austin, all of them, how they totally screwed this up, but now they spun it. So they caused a disaster, and then they're spinning their success into how they evacuated more people than anybody in history and all this. Yeah. So isn't it amazing how you create a total disaster, but then you spin it towards what a great success it was? But it's different when you cause a success that you didn't cause. So have you ever screwed anything up that bad and had a great win, Lee, in your life? Or
of course.
What?
Yeah, it happens. Sometimes it is a pretty big accomplishment to move 124,000 people in less than 10 days. But that would be like a small town. But that isn't going to help Biden at all. And what it's going to do is it's going to embolden people to test Biden, and he's going to have a lot more problems as the enemies of the United States process this information. And because they now know that he can be played. I totally believe that Biden was directly responsible for all this. I don't think he was going to listen to his advisors. This is something that he's had stuck in his craw for a long time. He convinced President Obama, to do a partial withdrawal from Iraq. It was equally disastrous. It just didn't get the play. because they were able to correct it. But it was a disaster, and I think that he's just a foolish old man, in making stupid. He's stuck, and he's so hard-headed about it. He just kept saying the same thing over and over, and I think that really did hurt his presidency. But he's going to be challenged in a major, big way on one level or another soon. It won't be by the Chinese right away, because the Chinese have the Winter Olympics, and they're not going to do anything to risk sanctions or a global boycott of the Winter Olympics, which, for some reason is very important to them. Who gives a tinker's damn about the Olympics? Not me, but from their calculus, for them, it's a prestige item. So I would say that. But I think some kind of move on Taiwan is a very strong probability at this point. And, some kind of an attack on the United States. I've told you before, on our satellites, on our electric grid infrastructure, because it can be done anonymously now. And we're also seeing a lot of small attacks on the U.S. Cyber attacks. Now, most of these cyber attacks don't get a lot of attention, but like in the case of Colonial Pipeline, millions of people were standing in line in the Southeast, and of course, that was impossible to hide from the public. But for the most part, these are quietly being paid off. They're being, and it's clear that there's a test. It's military procedure we've talked about called probing, and these are actors. These are paid actors, independent hackers, probably employed by the Chinese and the Russians. And if they succeed in shutting the internet down and a lot of other issues, we won't even know who to hit. We will not know who to retaliate against. That's they're going to pull the plug on our civilization. That's the poetic justice they hope to deliver to the United States. Poetic justice is at the core of all attacks by the terrorists. That's why they went after the World Trade Center, and people said, how did you predict the attack on the World Trade Center? And I said, because they did it before. They did a lot of small attacks leading up to it. And they hit the USS Cole, and they hit our embassy in Kenya, and they kept escalating and escalating and escalating. And we didn't do much about it. And, Clinton was too busy with his girlfriend, Monica Lewinsky. And, he shot a few missiles off. It laid the groundwork for the 9/11 attack. But I think we're ripe for an attack for that reason. And now, like with Kennedy, JFK had a disastrous meeting in Vienna with Khrushchev. And that guy walked away rattled by that event. And then from that is when he did the Bay of Pigs. That was two big reasons why the Russians thought he was a weak sister, and then that's when they tried to install missiles in Cuba. That's what caused that. And so something big is going to happen with regard to the Chinese. They're looking for a way to humiliate the United States, the Iranians, and of course the Russians. And so the Democrats have foolishly driven Russia into the Chinese camp, which is freaking crazy. And so, and Trump saw through all that crap, and he said, no, I need Russia to destroy ISIS, because the Russians had the personnel to kill ISIS. And you're already going to see that whole caliphate come flower right back into the Middle East. So, and I think there'll be a lot of consequences to come out of this for Biden. It's going to continue. Maybe they'll cover it up successfully. He's trying to change the subject right now.
I don't think what happened in Afghanistan was a mistake. The Democrats are really good at telling you what they're going to do. I mean, I don't know if they're really good or just sometimes that's stupid. But if you listen, do you remember when Biden was interviewed by Stephanopoulos? And basically, even Stephanopoulos said, don't you think there's something you could have done better? Now, this was prior to the 13 soldiers being killed. But Biden's answer was, oh, no. I mean, this is just going great. In fact, we knew what was going to happen, and we priced it into the decision. And even George Stephanopoulos was like, you priced this chaos into the decision? Because, at this point, the big news at that point was the Afghans that were hanging onto the plane that fell to their death.